Hi everyone, it's so nice to see everybody. My name is Mei Xian Qiu, and today I'm going to talk about the work that is currently showing at the USC Pacific Asian Museum. And I've titled my talk today Diasporic Divergences because it really encapsulates what the work is about, because it's three bodies of work and where they diverge and converge. I wanted to start with a brief history of myself and my family, because I think it's extremely important just to be able to understand why my work is the way it is. My family has lived in Indonesia, or the former Dutch East Indies, for generations. Could be from the 1880s to the 10th century, and we are called the Peranakan, which means the in-between children, or children of the womb but not indigenous. I think a lot of Peranakan people call themselves the not Chinese people, because we are probably one of the few subsections of the Chinese diaspora that's really hybridized or really mixed with indigenous populations. In this case, it's Malay. I'm part Malay, part Chinese. As you can see, this is a family picture of my grandfather. Oops, sorry, of my grandfather, and the women in the family are wearing sarongs instead of really traditional Chinese clothes. I grew up in a very post-colonial type of society, and here's a picture of my family with a local village Dutch priest, which was very common. So a lot of our history is a combination of this kind of a Dutch, Chinese, Indonesian hybrid mixture. This is a Dutch colonial tropical church. And one of my most potent memories is being woken up at 4 in the morning and walking for an hour in the dark, and getting to the church at 6 in the morning and seeing the sunrise go through the stained glass windows. And to me, that held a promise of the West, and it had its own sense of otherness. And in 1965, there was a great genocide in Indonesia, and 2 million people were buried in mass graves. At that time, my family, they were big believers in this movement called the assimilasi movement. They believed that the intercultural unity could really help mitigate violence. And so my father had created this assimilasi club, where he brought in people who are South Asians, Malays, people from the Near East, and the Peranakan Chinese. And whenever there was a riot, and these riots were usually, they were paid riots, so people were paid to instigate riots, and it was usually a handful of people. And so the members of the Assimilasi Club would go to the riots, and they would change the tone of the riots from anger to humor, and through humor they were able to keep violence from coming to their town. So there were these kind of really a lot of interracial type of relationships that were really common in my family. And then because my parents were really, I got tired of the type of discrimination there. We moved to the States, and this is a picture of my mother with my brother. This was a picture that was saved from a fire, and they encountered more discrimination in the States, and they sent most of the children back, and I ended up living with my grandparents in their batik shop until I was a preteen. And coming to the US, I really grappled with what being Chinese was, having been really separated from China as a family for hundreds of years, and having been identified so much as Chinese throughout the generations and discriminated for it. I really wanted to discover what it was. And because having come from a country where this kind of massive propaganda and the idea of false news was disseminated so effectively within the population, I created this body of work called Let a Thousand Flowers Bloom. And in this work, it's a mock invasion of the US by the Chinese, but the actors in the photographs are Pan-Asian American, artists or academics who would be the targets of a 100 Flowers movement had it existed in the US. The series is called Let a Thousand Flowers Bloom after 1956 Maoist campaign where he said, let 100 schools of thought, let 100 flowers bloom, let 100 schools of thought contend, meaning that people who had different ideas should be able to express themselves. And there's a dichotomy between the East and the West, whether that was just a way to get the foxes out of the holes or whether he really meant that. And a lot of people wanted to believe in that. The artists and academics came out of hiding. And they were subsequently, of course, they were subsequently identified and caught. But I wanted to really tackle with this idea of a really inner utopian ideal, despite having this kind of onerous dystopian exterior world. And, oh, oops. Yes. And really, again, tackle with the idea of fictional narratives or false news, or how a fictional narrative can really create a belief system as it has in Indonesia. And that kind of, a lot of those fictional narratives are still by 99% of Indonesians believed in, because it's been told to them so many times that it becomes part of their, you know, their history and worldview. I was lucky enough to go last year in May to a residency in Beijing, in China, and really discover what it was like to go to China and be an artist there. And I titled it Homecoming, Once We Were the Other, just for me to try to really see if I could connect back to this idea of a mythical homeland, and if it was possible to have a connection to the land and to the people. And I took a series of photographs in order to try to really connect to it unsuccessfully. When I was a child, I was really a real fan of archaeology. And so I thought that I would start to collect the midden or the trash or the refuse heap around the roadsides and the trash bins there, and to try to discover through that what the culture was about and what my connection was to the culture. We also did some ritual burnings of the cottonwood that was there. And I hauled the trash into my studio and I photographed it as if it was a classical Chinese dream landscape. And I did that, and it evolved over the series of weeks until my studio mates started having to bring fans all around them because the flies kept getting in their face, and we just had to, at that point, I had to haul it back, and I had to discontinue photographing the trash. And I'm going to show you the pictures of the trash as they looked in the camera. They haven't been modified in any way. Oh, this was some of the trash. And here are some of the photos of the trash that I took. And then what I did with it is I transferred it onto traditional Chinese scrolls, and I uncovered the images using water and tea and wax over and over again. And it was this kind of personal excavation to try to really create a cultural artifact and to have a connection with the land. And here, and here they are as they're hanging in the museum. And I hope that you can see it. And if you do, I would really, really like to know what you think of this work. Also, last year, I was able to go to Indonesia and go to a family reunion there in October 2019. And I took photographs there too, and created this another set of photographs called Dewi Cantik, or Pretty Darling. And in this series of photographs, I was really trying to grapple with the fact that the Indonesian people didn't really want to recognize that how they perceived this genocide and the people that died was really completely fictional, and that most of these people had not done anything, or hadn't done the things that they were supposed to have done through this kind of systematic propaganda. So I took the photos of a parade in Yogyakarta, in the middle of Java, in central Java. And I transposed those photos with photos of the victims, some of the victims of the 65-66 genocide. Since I come from a batik family, I had cut out patterns of traditional batik patterns in order to reveal some of the other images underneath. This particular pattern is called Truntum. It's a star pattern, which is it's the batik of love, and it is traditionally given during weddings. Batik is a very important part of Indonesian culture. And there's different manifestations of that same pattern. I also took pictures of my niece's bedroom, and this piece is called Kimmy's Room, and the pictures of the riots behind are pictures of some of those very periodic riots that are really a part of the Indonesian political landscape right now. One of my cousins had been in her car with a friend, and she was caught in one of the riots, and her friend had to convince the mob that she was not Chinese in order for her not to have been dragged away by the mob. And so this was this again is a photograph of the riot, and in front of it is photographs of my niece's room. And the symbols are the Garuda symbol, or the eagle symbol, which is the batik of power in Indonesia, or called sawat. And I hope that you can see these pieces as well, and tell me what you think. These are beginning pieces also of a larger body of work that deals with kind of transcultural artifact. That is my talk. I think I did it very quickly. And I would love to get your questions if you have any.